Would you like to win a commission painted mini completely free? Stay tuned to find out how. Yo dude, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. Today's video is a little bit different than normal. Yes, I'm going to show you how to paint something, but I'm also doing a giveaway which you can take part in. Now, I'm going to tell you all about how to enter towards the end of the video. You can understand why. As it's Christmas, I always paint a mini for my housemate. And over the last few years, we've painted things for his Death Guard army, his Demon army, and so on. Recently, though, my housemate decided that he wants to paint all of the minis for his army. He's got 2 on the go. So this year I was a little bit stuck as to what I could possibly paint for him. Until he thought, you know what, Jay? I have lots of miniature games that aren't 40k. Why don't you paint one of the minis from that game? And so I'm going to show you how to paint a great big beastie. This is Dagon from the Unfathomable board game. Now, of course, you don't have to buy that board game just to paint a miniature like this. You can use the techniques in this video for any of your large creatures. And all of that, excluding drying times for varnish, took only 90 minutes. So I'm going to show you how you can really speed paint something using the power of inks. Now, some of you might know on stream, we do a lot of giveaways. I give away 2 minis a month that I paint that you can win simply by watching my Twitch stream and being a subscriber. And I've decided that I'm going to open up my almost entire stash of giveaway minis for any of you guys to win. Now, here's what you're looking at. So as you can see, there's a pretty big range of miniatures here. We've got a lot of Space Marine things. We've got some Warcry stuff, some Sigmar stuff. We've got some Necrons, some Thousand Suns, some Chaos, some Orcs, some Genestealer, some Admech stuff. There's loads of minis here. Hopefully this will give you plenty of choice for you to choose one of your favorite minis from this set. It might be for an army that you play, it might be for an army you want to start, or it might just be, you know what, I really love that mini. Derp Cat, for instance. And you know you're never going to get around to painting it, so why not get someone else to paint it for you? As I said earlier, watch to the end of the video and I'll show you exactly what you need to do to get involved in this giveaway. For now though, let's get painting Dagon. Alright, so we're kicking things off with a white pre-highlight. This is going to allow the paint that we put on afterwards to have various values across the surface, so basically how bright something is. As you saw from the little instruction there, I use a 2-part flow improver, 1 part ink and 1 part water mix for this, and we go on very, very slowly with the airbrush. It looks bright white until you put something bright white next to it, and then you'll see that it really is grey. The reason we work so thin though is because it gives a nice smooth coat across the surface. We're not done with our pre-paint work though. We're taking some deep violet and we're applying this from below. So all of the dark areas that would be left predominantly black by our pre-highlight are now going to be purple. We're also using this to hit all of the tentacles, the tongue, all that sort of thing now before we start adding our next coats of paint with our greens. So here's the reason we're using all these inks. We're trying to get this mini painted quite quickly, and the time I painted this was only a couple of days till Christmas, and I wanted to make sure I could give this to Ben on Christmas Day. The reason we're using inks is because they are usually fairly translucent. If you look at a pot of ink, you'll see on the back of it a little symbol that tells you just how opaque it is. And this means we can take advantage of our pre-highlight that we've done with that white ink to give us different amounts of that showing through on our miniature when we're applying our colours. Now you saw with the green that as you start to put it on, it goes on quite thin at the beginning, and the more coats of paint you do, the more it becomes opaque and really starts to take on that hue. As we've worked through into the other elements of our green, we've mixed it in with a little bit of the brighter greens, and later on when we mix it into yellow as well, you'll really see we can get some very vibrant, really powerful colours out of this. But because it's translucent, we're still getting some of the darker areas, and it's giving you that variation across the surface. This is making our paint job very, very quick to do. Like I said at the start of the video, this whole thing took me only 90 minutes if you remove the amount of time it took for varnishes and so on to dry. Now, one thing I will say is that you must let the paint dry fully before applying a varnish to it. We've used a lot of flow improver throughout making this video, and one of the reasons behind that is because it increases the amount of time the paint is still wet on the miniature. This is allowing us to go on with the next coat of paint and essentially wet blend with the airbrush. If you think you are getting smooth gradients beforehand, start thinking about ways you can adopt this part of the technique into your painting to really get some crazy smooth blends. Because of the amount of texture on our model, it's not too important, but because of the size of this guy in terms of the scale that he should be, I didn't want any speckly kind of color shifts from one to another to occur. I wanted everything to be super smooth because I have this vision of this guy being hundreds of feet tall, bursting out of the ocean. I didn't want anything to take away from that. So here's our bad guy with most of the base coats put through via the airbrush. Now we're going to take some purple and start tidying up a little bit of the tentacles. We've got some processed magenta from Dala Rowney and more of that deep violet from Liquitex mixed up, and we're just making sure we've got all of the tentacles done in purple. It doesn't matter if we get a little bit of overspray onto any other part of the mini, as long as it's close to where the tentacles come from. It will just look like the sort of natural like skin tone is shifted as it goes towards the purple. I also forgot to paint the insides to his fingers and so on earlier on with the red, so we just did that straight away there. I've then added some processed magenta back into the red. This will change the hue of our tentacles quite a lot. We'll give them a nice bit of warmth, and we're hitting certain areas of them with this. Essentially anywhere I'd like there to be a little bit of a highlight either now or later. We then throw in a little bit of white ink and hit those same areas again to really boost the value of them and make them nice and bright. Certainly when it comes to the very thick moustache-like tentacle in the middle of his face, it really helps that stand out. Make sure you hit things like the tongue and all that sort of stuff as well while you're doing this part of the mini. So he's looking pretty good so far. Next step, let's do the water. So at the start of the video, I showed you how you could use a pre-shade or a pre-highlight to create interesting things that happen on the surface of your miniature. What I'm doing here is painting all the areas at the bottom of the miniature with a white pre-highlight. What this is going to really do is going to tidy up any of the bits of overspray that have hit the waves on the miniature from painting the rest of it. So it's going to get everything back to white. Once this has been done, we can then go back with our muted green and create a really nice water, sort of foamy dark sea kind of thing going on. This is a really easy step to do, and you shouldn't think about painting minis from just a linear perspective. You can always add something like this in if the miniature you're painting has an area that can allow it. What I'm saying is, don't be afraid to use this technique on minis that have already got paint on. It's going to be one of those things that you might not do too often, but every now and again an opportunity exactly like this one presents itself, and this is the perfect time to do something like this. So that's all of our airbrush work out of the way, and now it's time for some brushed highlights. Now, there's a lot of highlights you could do on the mini, but remember, this is a speed paint, and we don't want to spend too long on any of these steps. So really, you're looking to hit the important highlights, such as here, for instance, where we're bringing the colors together. You see a little bit of purple around that tentacle, where the highlights then come in and brought that more towards the green side of things. Now, one step that I didn't go through too much when we did this was we added a varnish. I gave this guy 2 coats of gloss varnish before giving it a coat of matte varnish, because this is a mini that's going to be played with in a game. It's also a mini that's going to be put in a box rather than put on a shelf or in like a carry case or similar when it's finished with. And let's be fair, it's also a mini that's a gift. I want it to stay looking good for as long as possible. So by bringing up some nice bright green with a little bit of yellow as well, we're starting to get some really nice sharp areas on our mini. On the eye lenses, on the eyes and so on, as you can see, we just added a little bit of green around the edge there, and that brings everything back together. It does mean that the red ink that was put there earlier on that spills out around it gives their eye a little bit of a sort of ruddy, very irritated look, which I think for something that lives underwater actually works pretty well. For all of the areas of red, we've mixed some Cador red and some Flash Gitch yellow and put on a few small highlights. So that's things like the fin at the back, the little bits between the fingers, and of course, painting the eyes themselves. We're going to put a little highlight later on in the eye, which I forgot to film, with just a little bit more Flash Gitch yellow in it. But before we get to that stage, we want to thin our mix down quite a lot with water and just paint this on all around the gums. Think of this like a slightly thicker wash, essentially. You want it to be able to run into all the recesses really, really nicely and naturally. I'm going to highlight that later on as well. We're taking a mix of Murderous Magenta and Emperor's Children and just putting a few thin highlights on all of the tentacles. You don't want to do too many, but I really do want to get a sense of texture in these tentacles. All the rest of him is covered in like big rippling, sort of soft looking skin, and we do want to make sure the same kind of a feel goes everywhere else. So don't take too long doing this, just a few quick stripes with the brush to make sure you've got some texture in the right place. Then we're back to the gums. We're adding in some more Flash Gitch yellow this time and just hitting the middle of these areas. Now it looks pretty ropey for now, but don't worry, when we paint the teeth later on, everything here will start to come together and it'll make a little bit more sense. We're then taking some Morrow white or any good white and we're hitting the top of the wave. So we want that foam that's sort of bursting up around him to really have that bright white highlight, and then just a few stripes in the waves themselves. We're doing all of this to make sure the base has a nice brightness to it, so when we put a black base rim on there, everything looks really snappy and bright and really stands out. That's the main goal here. Now let's paint all of the claws and teeth and so on. I'm using Incubi Darkness, which is a really, really good colour from GW. I didn't want to do something that's like bone bright because this guy lives undersea. I wanted them to be really dark and look a little bit alien and horrifying. We're then painting this on all around the gums, but just missing that little bit right at the very top of each of the teeth to allow that red orange to show through. We'll add a little bit of white for a couple of highlights. Firstly, just getting the majority of the surface, and then later on, slightly more restricted to just bring a little bit of brightness to each element of things like the teeth and the very edges of the claws and so on. That's pretty much this mini done. All we've got to do now is put a black base rim around him, and he is finished. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Now, I did promise you earlier on I'd tell you exactly how you could get in on the giveaway to win one of the miniatures we put in earlier in the video. And if you skip to this stage, why don't you go back and take a look at what's on offer. But thanks for watching, guys. Here's a quick message from me. Alright, so it's time for what you're all probably here for. How do you win a commission painted by me in your choice of colour scheme and so on? It's actually pretty simple. All you need to do is like the video, give it a thumbs up, be a subscriber, and then just comment down below which of these minis you'd take. That's all. All you've got to do is basically tell me what you want, like the video, and subscribe. If there's nothing there that you want, then comment which one you'd like to give to a friend. After all, this is Christmas. It's the season of giving, and maybe even tag that friend in that comment. I'll let this contest run until the start of the new year to give people plenty of time to watch the video and make their choice. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that watches the videos. Recently, they've not been uploaded too regularly, and for that, I am sorry. It's something I wish I could do more, but time constraints just don't allow it at the moment. So to everyone that's clicked the subscribe button, everyone that's watched any of my stuff, or even come and joined me in the streams, just thank you from me. You've made this year, honestly, pretty spectacular. Thank you. See you in the streams. It's actually really simple. All I need you to do is like the video.